From his terrifying iron-fisted knockout power claiming several victims to his champion-level star-studded training partners, here's why Dricus Du Plessis will destroy Robert Whittaker. One look at Dricus and you're terrified of the many ways this guy could knock you out, and his looks sure aren't deceiving, because he deals some unreal damage with his explosive power. Ever since his UFC debut against Marcus Perez at Fight Night, Stillknox made sure everyone knew he was here to dominate the middleweight division. You see, the fight was looking pretty even with both fighters going back and forth. Dricus was throwing his wild haymakers, and Marcus was defending them well. But then Stillknox's flurry of punches led Perez to have his back against the cage. Now that his opponent had nowhere to run, Dricus stepped in and unloaded a fearsome combo, starting with a high kick that Marcus blocked, followed by a devastating straight right that his opponent dodged. And this was all just a setup for Du Plessis to deliver the knockout blow straight to Perez's head with his left. Stillknox didn't even have much space to load up the punch, but with the destructive power he holds, he can deliver a knockout punch from anywhere. Though his most terrifying display of power was against Trevin Giles at UFC 264 in one of the smoothest knockouts the UFC has seen this year. Trevin was trying to break through the South African's guard with his punches, but Dricus wasn't going to let up so easily. So as soon as Du Plessis found his rhythm to strike back, he unloaded a fearsome 1-2, clipping Giles perfectly on the chin with his devastating left punch, knocking him flat on the ground. Heck, he even finished off the mythical blonde Derek Brunson, beating him senseless to the point that his coach threw in the towel. Now, with such insane knockout power, most would assume his ground game is gonna be his weak point, but that couldn't be any further from the truth because Dricus is an outstanding submission specialist. Even in his short time in the UFC, Du Plessis secured a deadly submission win over Darren Till at UFC 282. Even though Till's an experienced and well-known fighter, he had no idea what he was in for entering the octagon with Stillknox, because Dricus was totally dominating Darren, delivering a vicious ground and pound by the third round, dealing some serious damage after passing guard. Then Till made the worst mistake he could by turning around and giving his back to Du Plessis, practically serving him the win on a platter. So Dricus put him in a face crank that Till couldn't refuse tapping from. But his most impressive feats of submission were in his previous fighting league, EFC Africa, where Du Plessis won 5 matches consecutively by submission. I mean, this guy was unstoppable. And he was at his deadliest whenever he could get his hands on his opponent's neck. Which makes sense because Dricus totals an insane 10 submission wins in his 21-match MMA career. And his favorite weapons of choice, the guillotine and rear naked choke. And between them, he's claimed a total of 9 victims. Thanks to his absolutely shredded muscles, he creates such intense pressure when he squeezes that his opponents feel like their heads are gonna pop off. So with such a well-rounded fighting style, Robert Whittaker has nowhere to run to in the octagon. But it's really his superior wrestling abilities that truly give Stillknox the power to dominate. The glue that binds his fighting style of submissions and striking is his elite wrestling. Because of his wide and bulky body, he's a very hard opponent to take on in a wrestling match, giving him the natural upper hand. So while his competition is scared of his knockout-inducing punches, they end up undermining his wrestling, allowing him to perform a classic takedown, beautifully transitioning into a devastating ground and pound, or his favorite submissions. It's truly terrifying seeing someone of Dricus' stature running at you for a takedown, like a grizzly bear charging at you at full speed. And after Stillknox gets a good hold of you, it's almost impossible to get out because of how strong his basics are. He keeps his head down to avoid damage, he clinches up using his strong kickboxing background, and his double-leg takedowns completely fold his opponents. His best use of wrestling really is based on the old saying that goes, wherever the head goes, the body follows. And because of that, Du Plessis always tries to get a good clench going on the dome piece, opening up an easy chance for a guillotine. So Whittaker better get his wrestling chops ready because Dricus isn't the right guy to underestimate. I mean, one look at the guy's background and record should tell you that. He started judo at the young age of 5 and later developed an interest in kickboxing at just 15 years old, but it didn't take him long to become a champion in the competitive sport. After he reached the age of 19, he knew fighting was what he was made for. So with his path clear, Du Plessis racked up an insane record in amateur kickboxing, earning himself the iconic nickname Still Knocks. But his professional MMA career didn't start until a decade ago in 2013, when he fought for EFC Africa. He debuted with impressive 4 back-to-back victories, ending each match with a finish. Then he fought for the championship against Gareth McClellan at EFC 33 and faced his first loss. At this point, Dricus knew slowing down wasn't an option, because after that, he went on an unreal 8-fight win streak. Heck, he even went down a weight class and dominated that division, becoming the welterweight champion, then going back to middleweight and winning that title too. So whatever you might think of him, Dricus was a double champ. And that's an insane feat to pull off in any fighting league. What's crazier though is that his 8-fight win streak ended with his second loss, and Du Plessis hasn't lost a fight since. And then again, the number of finishes he has isn't any less mind-boggling. In Still Knocks' whole career of 19 wins, he's only won a single fight by decision. So with 10 submissions and 8 knockouts to his name, everyone knows that when Du Plessis steps into the octagon, it's designed to be an exciting match. Especially if it's against someone like Robert Whittaker, who's a well-rounded fighter himself, more than capable of going toe-to-toe against Dricus. And there's no doubt the fight will be a tough one, but then why really is it that Du Plessis is the obvious favorite? I'd say it's because Robert lacks the momentum and drive that Still Knocks is carrying right now. I mean, Whittaker is a veteran in the sport, fighting professionally since 2009. He's no spring chicken in the UFC either, being in the promotion for the past 11 years. And in that time, he's even been champion once. On the other hand, Dricus only has 5 fights in the UFC and has won them all. He's really out there, hungry for blood, and you can see it in his fights. Every time he steps into the octagon, he's looking for a finish. While Whittaker hasn't taken all 5 of his past matches to decision, even losing one of them, safe to say the Reaper doesn't have his old finishing power anymore. Dricus is new blood in the promotion, and we all know how the UFC favors momentum, so if he can successfully take out Whittaker, he's surely going to get a shot at the title, and with that on the line, Dricus is going to be unstoppable. And chances are Whittaker's not gonna have the same drive because he's lost to Izzy twice before, and a rematch doesn't seem exciting to the fans or the UFC. So with the momentum Du Plessis' title run is carrying, he might just run through the Reaper. After all, Dricus has trained with some high-level champions throughout his career. With both of their kickboxing backgrounds, Du Plessis apparently sparred with the middleweight champion, the last stylebender himself, earlier in their career. With both fighters being relatively new to MMA, Adesanya revealed that Du Plessis clearly had the advantage at grappling. But he gave him a run for his money in the stand-up game, being the elite striker he is. Izzy also publicly announced that he wants to fight Dricus in a championship match rather than Whittaker. Also speaking of champions, former welterweight champion Kamaru Usman has apparently trained with Still Knocks too. So Dricus has actually trained with 2 of the 3 African kings of the UFC, making quite an impressive list of sparring partners. He's clearly not in the UFC to make friends though, because since his debut, he's taken shots at both Izzy and Usman. Looks like he's so past the fear now, having trained with such lethal partners, that he's even starting beef with them. So Robert Whittaker better be prepared for a championship-level fighter. Well, there you have it, fight fans. From his champion-level star-studded training partners to his terrifying iron fist knockout power claiming several victims, that was why Dricus Du Plessis will destroy Robert Whittaker.